because everybody said this guy couldn't be caught. And I was like, okay, challenge accepted. Dude stole my whiskey, stole my chicken, stole my halloumi, and that stuff in the pot he literally emptied my whiskey in it. It was a bottle of like a Major's Reserve, which is, just a good whiskey that I enjoy.
Right.
And he emptied it and put chicken in it. It was boiling the chicken in the whiskey. So the guy was like, had a screw loose.
Jay, I wanted to have you back and talk about some of your war stories from what you've done and what you've seen, because the last podcast we just talked about your mission, which is amazing. But there's so many stories that you've got, some you shared with me, that I want to kind of give people an example of your work in Africa and all these different areas in Africa. Namibia, you sent me one, right? One of the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And Botswana. So you've done all these different areas. What was the first one that you sent me? Because that wasn't about anti-poaching, but it was about tracking, right?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a silly story, but I was in Zimbabwe. I'd set the program up, been in and out a couple of times, and there's this area where I stayed. We call it the research camp, and it's this beautiful scenery. It's in the wild as well. I mean, there's nothing there to keep you away from anything that's got four legs. So yeah, I'll send you a couple of photos of me in my tent, and it's so hot that you have to sleep on the outside of it. So it's just like a little roof. And I mean, the ellies come up next to you at nighttime. And if you look at the photo, you'll see like I put some chairs next to me, and it's not that it's going to protect me at all, but it's more so I hear them move if something gets close, and then I can like scream and shout and pretend I know what I'm doing. But so I've got my little tent area, got my little fire area, and then there's like a communal kitchen area, and it's got like a small gas stove inside it, and that's kind of where you go and prep your meals. I cook most of my stuff on the open fire. I go straight up like wild man stuff. But it's so the one morning I wake up, and at the time, coincidentally, like all the park management, senior management were in Harare, the capital, for meetings and whatnot, because the park was going through this like political kind of change, and they were looking at turning it into an NGO and whatnot. So everybody had left, and the people that were left behind were kind of middle management and me. So I wake up, I'm like absolutely shattered. Go down to the kitchen, I'm going to make my coffee, and I was doing the whole ketone thing at the time, so I was looking forward to my bacon and eggs. And I get down there, and I like open the door, and I look in there, and it's just everything's like clean as anything. And I had a couple of whiskeys in that before with the fire, and I thought, man, what did I do last night? What was in that whiskey? Because everything is like clean, it's put away, tucked away, and I was the only one staying at the camp in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, and then I realized everything's gone. It's like literally been stolen. And then I see this, like, there's like I don't even know what you call it, like a serving window. Like you can, hand stuff from the kitchen into the dining area. And I can see there's a piece of grass that's been like wedged in to keep it closed. And someone's broken in and hucked all my food and cut loose. So I call up the workshop manager, and I was like, listen, someone needs to get down here now, because, there's guys that have been in my kitchen and taken all my stuff. And the previous day, there were some guys that had basically they were putting in a new like patio type thing, and they were from the community, and obviously me just jumping to conclusions. I was like, it's got to be the builders. They're the only people that have been here. They know that they've made a plan and they've gone in, and just trying to have an educated guess. Yeah. So I go through, and old Fambi comes down, the manager, and he goes, no, it's got to be Tondi. And I said, Tondi? Who's Tondi? Yeah, Tondi lives in the bush. He like runs around the bush, and he steals from the tourists and the staff and management and whatnot. And I was like, what? How's this the first time I've ever heard of this? Let's why haven't you guys caught him? Oh, we can't catch him. So now like I'm pretty livid, and I said, okay, stand by. So I get on the radio, guy, right? I call the dog. I call the dog unit. And the one guy answers the radio, died. He's a phenomenal handler, and he's got a brilliant dog, Sammy. And Sammy's had numerous arrests like over the years. So anyway, they come down to where I'm staying in the Land Cruiser, and I said, and Di's a brilliant visual tracker as well. I said, go find Spore being tracks, and tell me where they are. Like 2 seconds later, he's like, Spore. And that's one of the things I teach the guys as we're tracking with the dogs. If they see a footprint, they raise their hand and they tell me spoor. So they've seen a footprint on the ground or human sign on the ground. And what that does, it gives, confidence to the team that's following up, because a lot of people don't understand the dogs, but also from a training perspective, then I know he's paying attention to his surroundings. And so he's like, spoor. Go over, sure enough, there's a couple of footprints and it goes into this creek and disappears off. And I said, grab Sammy, let's go. So we start following up. And as we're going along, I see this little white piece of paper on the floor. And I was like, what the hell's that? I pick it up and it's halloumi cheese. And I know this guy, Tondi, doesn't go to the supermarket and buy halloumi cheese. And I love halloumi cheese. I was doing the whole ketone thing, frying it up every night, a little snack with my dinner. And so I was like, he's eating my halloumi, as he's bugging out of here. So carry on going. And there's this area where there was years ago, they started building these cottages, and they were supposed to be along this riverbank and a tourist attractor type thing, and loads of different reasons it never got finished. So I don't know, it was about a 6-foot high wall, no roofs, nothing like that. So we start heading towards one of these buildings. And I thought, I bet you he's in there. So we fan out. We're ready to smash this guy. Dog tracks to the door. We go inside the building, and it's literally just concrete. There's nothing else, bricks and concrete floor. And there's a bed on the floor, and there's a little fire pit, and there's a pot on the fire pit. And I kind of glance inside and see some stuff in it. And we just, and the dog takes us through the building, out another door, and just keeps going. So obviously this guy's heard us coming along. Yeah. And he's cut loose and he's headed towards the river, which is it's a pretty big river. There's some big crocs in there, and I thought, well, if we go down to the river, he can be free. Kudos to him, because I'm not going in that water. Right. And so we hit the riverbank, and the dog kind of breaks downstream and starts moving. But it's thick bush. mean, there's hippos inside that bush, and you can't see them. It's properly not nice terrain. So I stay on the riverbank up high to try and give eyes on down towards the guys as I can hear them moving through. And as we're walking along, as I'm trying to keep up with them, I hear the screaming and shouting and the thud and all this. And I thought one of the guys has got him, or he's got one of the guys, or, don't know what's going on. And I just hear this moving through the bush. So I start running, and I'm following along up high, and I can hear the team moving through the bushes. Lots of noise and stuff, and then everything starts calming down, and I see this guy Tondi start backing up out the bush up towards me, and he has no clue I'm behind him. And as he's backing up, and I can see that this dude is ripped and properly strong. Wow. And I just thought, man, if we get into a scuffle, I'm going to get hurt here. This guy, he's just straight up Bushman strong. Wow. And I scream at him, and all I had was a radio with that big long antenna. I just screamed and pretended I had a stick or something. Yeah. And he just literally collapsed on the ground, spread eagled, and gave up. And next thing, the boys came out of the bush. They jumped him and arrested him. And I sent you that little video there, and you'll see at the end of the video, there's a guy in handcuffs, and that's Tondi, and Sammy the dog's walking next to him. And it's just a promo video we did a few years ago. I don't have the original clip. I've been looking for it, but it was a pretty cool proof of concept for us. And because everybody said this guy couldn't be caught, and I was like, okay, challenge accepted. Dude stole my whiskey, stole my chicken, stole my halloumi, and that stuff in the pot he literally emptied my whiskey in it. It was a bottle of a Major's Reserve, which is just a good whiskey that I enjoy. Right. And he emptied it and put chicken in it. It was boiling the chicken in the whiskey. So the guy was had a screw loose. Yeah. But anyway, we caught him. So he goes to the cops, and the next day they let him go. And so he came back. Just because he hadn't really done anything crazy. So it was, they've got other things to worry about, I guess. Plus, they don't have the facilities to hold someone for a long amount of time. Right. But I left, and I came back to the States, and then I was talking to the handlers on a WhatsApp kind of message, and I was asking them about it, and they said, oh no, we come across Tondi's footprints, because he's barefoot in the bush. So they tracked him again, and they started following him, and that's their real world tracking practice that they do all the time. Yeah. And anyway, he's since been moved on, and he's been taken out the park, and he's been moved a good 500 kilometers away. But that was everybody came back from the meetings. They were like, you caught Tondi? And I was like, damn right, he guy crossed the line, And so from that moment on, everybody was like, okay, maybe these dogs can do it, because up until that point, there was a little kind of is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen?
And what kind of
But
dog
yeah,
was
it
that
was
tracked him? What kind of dog was it that you got
German
back?
Shepherds.
It
Yeah,
was a German Shepherd, yeah. And how
yeah,
long
yeah.
was it
So my
before you
first two
caught him?
dogs. We tracked for, I would say, about. Oh, it wasn't far. It was about 2 kilometers, I would say,
Oh, he
altogether.
caught him
So
that
it was a
fast.
short track.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think he was like staying in those houses, so he'd it's
Mm,
not like he had moved. But the track was probably 2 hours old by the
right.
time we started following him. So it wasn't
Right.
like a significant track by any means, but
Right.
it was because they've been after Tondi for a long time, and all of a
That's
sudden we
crazy.
come in and we catch him. But look,
Yeah.
credit goes to Dyson and Sammy. They're the ones who did the work
That's
without his
amazing.
visual tracking and the dogs tracking.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was quite funny seeing my halloumi there.
Yeah. Especially your halloumi and your
Yeah,
whiskey. But so when they track down
yeah,
to the river, because I know with hippos and everything, it's super dangerous if you get between them and the water. And then the crocs are
big
gnarly
time,
and there. Any
totally.
danger with the dog getting too close to the hippos or too close to the crocs or anything like that?
No, during the day the hippos tend to stay in water.
Yeah.
They don't like to come out. They'll come out at night to graze and that kind of stuff, but they're not going to mess around like out of the water. I guess they feel vulnerable, and they're the dominant species in the water, so
Yeah.
nothing bothers them there. When they come out, things change.
Yeah.
So yeah, but obviously the crocs. There's some areas where we work in where people will take the dog, like a dog from the community, and
Yeah.
they stake it out on a beach, and they'll
Wow.
snap their legs, and the dog obviously screaming and howling and making the right noise, and then you just see these crocs just start coming out the water, and they illegally hunting them for meat and for their hide. So
Oh,
it's crocodiles see dogs as like
big.
easy food.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we talked a little bit about it last time with some of these other organizations that work in Africa, and I get a little miffed with a couple of, like, the one big thing was this lady saying, "Oh, you have to feed your dog, meat, raw meat," and I'm not for or against a raw meat diet.
Yeah. Same thing.
Thing is, if you look at the resources that we have in some of the places we can, but most of the parks we work in, there's no electricity. We don't have a
Mhm.
fridge that we can put meat in
Right.
or freeze it, and
Sure.
also the guys are on like a low income, compared to what everybody's used to in the US, like in the
For
West,
sure.
and they get paid hardly anything in comparison.
Yeah.
And if I start feeding my dogs raw meat when the guys' rations aren't nearly as
Yeah.
nice, I'm going to have complete and utter, like, just, it'll be carnage, and
Yeah.
the dogs are probably going to end up not getting fed,
Right.
and they need the calories to take it in. So I go with dry food. It's easy to store,
For sure.
and it's easy to monitor. I can look at it if it's going missing or anything like that, which it never does, obviously, but
Right.
it helps, and yeah, and then having like a dip tank or a pool type thing for dogs to go
Mhm.
and self-relieve in. That's
Mm.
another thing that drives me up the wall. That attracts bees, attracts flies. Kennels can get quite unhygienic,
So people
and
do
I
that?
don't want my dog to know it can.
They do that?
Absolutely,
Why?
some programs do. So that when it gets hot, so if a dog's running around like it's airing yard,
Yeah.
like loose running, it can go and jump in the water and get cool,
Yeah.
which is fine. I understand that. I'm not like saying there's anything wrong with that, but
Yeah.
I don't want to teach my dogs that they can self-relieve in water. So when we
Right.
come to like a river crossing, or when we have to negotiate like a water obstacle,
Yeah.
I want the dog to think I've got to get through this because my
Yeah.
reward or whatever's on the other side of the river. So it's
Right.
like it's in and out. We don't
Yeah.
mess around with staying on the water. I mean, some of the water that we walk around, I mean, it's the Zambezi River in a couple of the programs where there's some big water, some big crocodiles inside.
Yeah.
So we've got to be very, very careful and aware of that.
What do you do?
Yeah.
So when you're going through like a river like that, and having been there, seeing how the crocs, you can't see them because a lot of times they rest under the water too. How do you
So
assure
yeah,
there's no crocs or hippos?
so I mean, well, the hippos you tend to see like in pods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They I don't want to say they like deeper water, but they do prefer. You'll see them. You'll see the pods of hippos. It's not like
Okay.
they're going
Yeah.
to be like completely out of sight.
Right.
But we're also not crossing rivers where we have to swim.
Got it.
We're going to go
Okay.
like at the deepest, waist deep.
Got it.
Have I been in deeper water? Absolutely. But it's the one time and I'll probably never do it again. And it was like heat of the moment, literally right behind someone who jumped in, and I followed him in to arrest him. So it was like he's right there. Bit of a, didn't really think about it, now I would. But so it's kind of like thigh deep going through. Everybody has a big long stick, and you can kind of bash the water as you go through. And obviously there's weapons. And what you'll tend to see is the croc will come, across the, like swimming towards you, and then it'll submerge. So obviously, and then during the day, they're going to be on the banks. I'm not going in the water at nighttime. If we're after a poacher and he's crossed the water at night, he's free. So it's just, trying to, look, there's obviously an element of risk, but we want to make sure we, we do our job and we negotiate it safely. And again, I don't want the dog to like think, hey, I'm going to just chill here and cool down. And nor do I want the guys doing that. So so we in and out. And I get a lot of criticism for that it's a bit extreme. I plan for the what if situation and the worst case scenario. I'm not, just trying to, and at the same time, the dogs are groomed well. They go through cool down drills. We have ice packs. We have a variety of different things that we can use to ensure that our dogs stay cool. Now, if a dog does go down with a heat injury, worst case scenario, absolutely, we'll find a shallow pool and stuff and use that as a first aid treatment to cool the dog down. That doesn't mean never goes in the water. Of course. But it comes down to, you at the right moment type thing.
It's under your control. In other words, you decide when they're going to do it and when they're not going to do it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, look, the most common saying, I don't know if you know it, I'm sure you do, but the only thing two dog trainers can agree on is that the third dog trainer is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
So everybody's I've gotten so much criticism over the years. I'm sure you have. I think if you get criticism, you're doing something right. I mean, there's something, they have to kind of pick at something. So I wouldn't look at that, but I think that's a really good concept, because why would you want your dog thinking, wow, there's water, I'm going to go in, and especially in a place like in Africa, where you don't know what's in that water, and the dog's going in there to relieve himself or to cool off and stuff like that, and he's putting you and your team at risk.
No, I mean, I remember we were doing some training in an area, and there were these weird tracks on the floor, and I was with that guy Dyson, with Sammy, and I said, hey, Di, what's this here? And he's looking in it, and he's got his hand on and he's like, it's a crocodile. And I was like, what? And we were like 12 kilometers from the nearest body of water. And obviously it was dry season. So this croc had decided to kind of like, okay, it's time to go find some more water, middle of the night type thing. And that gave me the heebie-jeebies for a while. I just thought of crocs like coming up to my tent in the middle of the night, trying to find water, and there I am in its path. But it was very weird. It's obviously its water hole had dried up, and it was trying to find a new kind of water source. So they're everywhere, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, crocs are real prevalent, right? I mean, and they're gnarly. They're really they're super aggressive to people, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, with anything that's got a pulse, if you go in the water near one of them, they're going to come after you. I think the difference between a croc and a gator is I say this with very little experience in it, but a gator is going to hunt you when it's hungry. It's not as aggressive. Whereas a Nile crocodile, that thing's coming for you. If it just ate 2 minutes ago, and he's going to stick you under a log in the water, he's going to eat you later. Yeah. So there's they're a very aggressive animal, and they're the ultimate hunter. They are. Wow, they're one of the oldest animals on the planet, dinosaur times, and they've survived for a reason. Yeah. Yeah,
that's true. That is very true, yeah. It's funny, when you were telling me the story about Tondi, I actually thought where this was going, because I remember one of the places I was at, they said, just lock everything, lock your tent. We had little locks on the tent, and they said, because the baboons will get in and steal everything. And I thought Tondi was going to be a baboon. I was literally going through the story waiting for you to say, and it was a baboon, because actually a person was even better story. But because I've heard so many stories about baboons just going in and just trashing an entire tent, and that's what I thought you were going with that. That's very funny. Jay, one of the things I think that's really interesting is, like, how do you get your dogs, your teams, how do you get everybody ready? It's a huge operation you have. I mean, it's not just, people tend to think it's a couple people and a dog just going out, but there's a lot of back-end support and a lot of getting teams ready and getting the dogs introduced to the teams and the teams used to what you're gonna do. Can you run me through what you do and how that works?
Yeah, so if you think of, a fully trained operational team on the ground in a national park in Africa, turn on Nat Geo and pick the first African, kind of scene. Obviously, we're not necessarily working in the Serengeti where it's big, wide open, wildebeest migrations, all that kind of stuff. But some of the areas are like that. But you've got a guy with a dog, and he's working, and he's obviously engaged on that dog. He's paying attention to its behavior. The way I teach is feel the leash. So low light, conditions, or if it's thick or whatever, the handler can tell just in his fingertips if that dog's tracking or not tracking. And then, you've got your cover men, your security team, whatever you want to call it, depending on, your terminology. And literally those guys can get left behind if that dog's moving too quickly. So the handler's got to be conscious of them. He's got a radio. He's got to be able to talk on that radio. He's got to communicate with the ops room. They might be giving him information. He might be giving information to them. At the same time, he's got to communicate with the guys next to him. There's a threat, so he's got to keep his head on a swivel. It could be the poacher, it could be armed. But most of the time we're running into wild animals. So it could be a buffalo, elephant, lion, you name it. So a warthog is dangerous to the dog. So the guys, they've got to maintain like really good situational awareness. To cap that off, you could have top cover, so a fixed wing aircraft or a helicopter of that some sort. And they're going to be communicating with the handler, the team leader. And you can imagine there's so many moving parts that's going on to this. Yeah. And, one of the things that, so I think of that kind of scenario there, to be fully prepared for that, the only way to do it is to train for it. You have to, practice what you preach. So if I'm saying that's what the handler can get out there and do, it's not fair for him to go and do like the course and then at the end of the course cut him loose. And the ops rooms never worked with the dog. The anti-poaching teams have never worked with the dog. There's a variety of different kind of like disciplines and kind of, I suppose, bought-in agents that are needing to like work with that team. So I do these scenarios, and a lot of people will, if somebody told me this would happen a few years ago, I would have said, Jay's not going to be able to do that. Right. But we do, and we're doing it pretty consistently now with these. So we do a 25-kilometer scenario, and I put on a pair of flip-flops. That's the same as like what the poachers are using. I deploy at first light, or even before, depending on where I need to be. And I like disappear into the bush, and it's me and one other person, and we lay the track. Nobody else knows where we're going. Obviously, there's a couple of like head shed people who know what the plan is in case we run into trouble. That becomes basically a forward patrol almost. So even though we're laying a track and we're in training mode, we're still covering ground where there's potential poachers and activity and whatnot. We'll look at the historical information and we'll decide what route we're going to take. And typically, if there's an old camp or fireplace or poaching incident or whatever that scenario is, waterhole, somewhere where a poacher's going to go to make his life easier, we'll kind of like try and navigate to hit all those different areas while we lay the track to see if there's anything going on. An hour after I set off, the ops room gets a call, and the ops room's just told, hey, look, 2 people seen entering the park at this location, as an example. There's so many different scenarios that we've done, whether it's a carcass or, shots fired or whatever. But this, scenario I'll give is, two men crossing a river, which is a natural boundary for the park, and they've crossed into the park. So the dog team reacts and they come out. So on this particular occasion, I got the helicopter to drop me off at first light. So it landed, we jumped off, we started patrolling or laying the track. And along the way, literally 30 meters into it, we see footprints on the ground. And it's like, okay, we've gone to real world. So normally what happens is with real world, it's like you call the ops room and say, okay, training's canceled. We're going to follow these guys. Right. But obviously there's only a couple of us. So we're not going to like actively go and try and arrest someone. We're going to get the team back in and then start coordinating it. So initially it's like, these are the unluckiest poachers in the world because the whole world's about to come down on them. And so we start following these tracks, and then we realize that they're probably like trying to collect firewood or something like that, because they do this horseshoe, and then you see their footprints getting faster and the dust has been kicked up. And that's obviously when they heard the helicopter. So they've left the park. So I made the call and said, look, let's carry on. So the point of that is it can become real world pretty quick. So anyway, we start laying, and we'd been following these tracks, and we were probably, we were like a good hour into it. and we start going up the hill, and there's this big, mountain that we kind of go up and across it, and it's an old lava flow, and it's a beautiful scenery. And I hear the helicopter coming, and we're probably, I don't know, 600 meters away from where we got dropped off. And I thought, man, did the pilot forget something, or what's going on? And I'd said to the ops room the day before, they knew there was going to be a scenario. So basically, as we're running through the bush, we don't get shot at.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, this is our starting location, is what we're going to be doing. Whatever the anti-poaching team wants, let them go with that. So if they want to use an extra vehicle or get a driver or get extra GPSs, whatever they need, support them. I want to make sure that they're problem solving, they're using their initiative, and they're coming up with a plan with very little information to be successful on the ground.
Right.
So they get the call, and they decide, let's just go get the helicopter to take us there. So they go and see the pilot. He lands after dropping me off, and they're like, "Hey, can we get a lift?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." Jay said they can get whatever they want. So off they go. So I think now I'm going to be like a good hour and a half, hour 45 minutes ahead of them for the scenario. And meanwhile, we're like 15 minutes ahead. Now, obviously, we've done this horseshoe, like trying to find the footprints where these guys have gone. Yeah. But so it's a bit of a cluster. Anyway, we basically start running up this mountain just to create space, because I do want a day's work and test the guys. So we go, and basically these guys are hot on our heels majority of the day. We go to this like cave area where there's always like a camp, or someone's pre-stored water for poachers, that kind of stuff. And we get there, we scan around, nothing there, keep running, and we keep going. Eventually we lose them on some rocks, and they rest the dog up. We create a good 5 kilometer gap between us, so I'm feeling like I can relax a little bit. And we set up a little camp, we light a fire, have some lunch, and like we've got the easy job by being the poachers. They've got to work really hard catching us. Right. And we start heading back up that same mountain, but up this hill. And at that point, I have a predetermined plan. So I predetermine my route, which I provide to like the one individual at the ops room. So if anything goes wrong, we lose comms or whatever, they can come find us. And at that particular area, it used to have a lot of elephant. And I said, okay, we'll simulate a gunshot. So we have some blank rounds, and I've got a video of it. And my friend Miner takes a shot in the air with this blank, and literally I'm holding my phone up to like video it, because it'd be good, for the debrief. Yep. And you just see in the horizon this person just like running towards us. And one of the guys had been following us, and we had no clue about it. He'd been separated, but he didn't want to like lose visibility on us. And I've told all the guys, I said, like, you can't be on your own. Never engage if you're by yourself, because you just, it's going to be bad news. And so he'd been monitoring us the whole time. We thought we were slick, Meanwhile, we've got this guy following us the whole time, but his comms were down, so he couldn't report it. He was waiting to get into like a more elevated position. So off we go. So I see him. I'm like, okay, we start running, and we're running up the hill. And by chance, he got comms. And the guys did a really good job, and they'd pre-placed the aircraft because they knew they were close to us. And the aircraft was like 3 kilometers away on the other side of the hill. And they called him in, and he's in like a Super Cub, and that thing can fly for like 8 hours. So he was just like in a holding pattern waiting for us. And we were running up this hill on this elephant path where you can't go left or right. I mean, we're stuck. And he came over, and he was just circling above us. And he got eyes on, and that's it. He stayed with us. So the 3 of us kept running, and old Miner was pretty tired at that point, and he just said, I'm done, So I said, fine, you get arrested. And my buddy Ben and I carried on. So we took off, and we were trying all these evasive things, and all I wanted to do was get to the 25 kilometer mark and win. Now it's becoming like a challenge,
Like a race.
And these guys are within a kilometer of us, And so we decided to go off the path and cut through the bush, thinking, we were pretty smart, so we could lose them in the thick stuff. All that did was allow them more momentum. And they actually passed us, and they were setting up like ambushes in front for the arrest. And coincidentally, there was a vehicle with a team that were coming on the main road, which is a good kilometer to our right as we were running along. And they were setting off a cutoff as well. And I could see the plane knew where we were and everything. And I mean, it was like proper panic. We're about to get caught. And I just wanted to get to the 25K mark. So this is like probably 21 kilometers into it now. Wow. And we're just running, and I'm hoping they're buggered, and we can keep running, and we've had a bit of a break at lunchtime, and they haven't. They've worked through it. we're hydrated, they probably aren't, you know, and I'm kind of like trying to guess. And I knew that road was there, and I knew they would have a cutoff team there because the fixed wing could see us. And I just said, okay, we're going to run, and then 200 meters before the road, we're going to brake and try and bypass them. Because the pilot has to talk to the ops room to talk to the ground. So I was going to use that as part of the debrief. Listen, your comms needs to be better. You know, you guys were slow. That's how we got around you, thinking I was like super clever. And anyway, we tried our little flanking move. Just prior to that, I turned around and I could see one of the guys coming at us. His name's Simon, and he's a beast. And I love the guy to bits. He's the most stoic human being you could meet. He's got a dog that absolutely adores him. You know, when I was in the British Army, one of the things we got tested on was our voice inflection. And, you know, we had to be able to project our voice and change our tone and do all this stuff. Simon can't do any of that. He just talks monotone, quiet as anything. When I first met him, I thought, you're never going to be a dog handler, you know, with my biased opinions. So that dog adores Simon, and they track forever, and he's a machine. So he's coming by himself. And I said to Ben, I was like, Simon's behind us, which basically means we're in big trouble. And I said, okay, I'm going to rugby tackle him. As soon as he gets close, I'll spin, tackle him, and then you just floor him. He's like, okay. I said, when I shout now. So we do this whole thing. I was like, now, boom, tackle him, pick him up, slam him on the ground. Ben jumps on his head, and he starts picking us both up off the ground, you know. So I went straight into like, okay, I'm the instructor. You're dead. I told you never to be on your own. You have to stay here now. And then we took off again. And I could see in his like blind rage in his eyes. But honestly, he was going to hurt us. So I totally pulled rank on him. So we cut loose, and then we hit that road, and they had a full-on ambush there. And I've got some photos that I sent you that it shows like me and Ben running through the bush, and there's a guy with hands on Ben, and there's 2 or 3 guys in front of me that I'm running towards, and it was brilliant, you know. And that was a culmination of like 2.5 years training of, you know, learning how to communicate with the aircraft, learning how to do OPs, anticipate the poachers' movements, and you know, and I don't think that, you know, I'm doing anything amazing, or, you know, I'm just making the guys go through it. And I think practice makes perfect. You know, there's no point just chasing someone all day long, because they're always going to be ahead of you. So especially these guys that we chase, they're super fit. They can run all day with absolutely no water or food, and you know, they can stay a step ahead. So we have to be smarter. We have to be more efficient. The dog needs to be more accurate. So, like, you know, when I think about all these things that we need to do, it's really, really important that, you know, we're able to like successfully do the follow-up. And it's not just dogs. It's not just visual trackers, whatever. But I mean, as an example, like that track there, we got arrested at the 23-kilometer mark, which kills me because we're 2 k's away from the finish line. But the dog team covered with they had the collar on their neck, you know, for the dog. The dog did 31 kilometers. So so they cover so much more ground, you know, and it's just like, you know, going on and off the track, following it. And it just, I don't know, like for me, it just kind of shows the amount of effort that goes into it. And then obviously being able to like keep up with that dog and not, you know, like put too much pressure where you're going to tire it out, but at the same time not run head first into the first piece of danger you come across, you know. So all of that kind of stuff is really, really important.
So so we were talking about, so was there one dog team on that, one dog and then a support team behind them?
No, so there's 2 dogs. And so there's a primary dog, which is always going to be our best dog. It's inevitable. If however many dogs you have, one dog is better than the rest of them. So the primary dog is going to be deploying, and then the backup dog is there if he gets too hot, gets injured, whatever, you know. And I've had scenarios where I've done training like this, and the guys have actually seen me from an OP, and they follow up. So they send a team ahead of where the dog's tracking. You know, go back. So the scenario I just told you about, like I said, is a culmination of lots of mistakes, basically, is what it comes down to. Two 25K tracks prior exercises. The guys saw me, they pulled the dog off track, they ran ahead, actually drove ahead with the vehicle, and then tried to like cut spoor again to try and follow me. And they couldn't find where the OP had seen me because it's just very homogeneous terrain. There's nothing like really that can indicate where I was exactly. So they were guessing, and they struggled, and they lost the track. So then they had to go back all the way to where they were originally and start following again. So that was their own fault. They made a mistake, and they'll never make that mistake again because they lost so much time on that. So that's an example of, one of the lessons learned. So we discussed it afterwards, and I pull up, Google type image, and I show them, where the track layer went, what the plan was. A lot of the guys think that I'm going to go and try and outsmart them and change it up all the time. I stick to the plan. A poacher has a plan. Obviously he's going to do whatever, and I do the same thing. So if they catch me in the first 5 kilometers, so be it. The best I've had, those 14 kilometers. This was on my last trip. They caught me properly at 14 kilometers. I had no clue they were there. They just came out, and there they were. And the week before, they caught me at 16 kilometers. The same thing. I had no clue they were there. They did a proper, excellent ambush. Very, very good comms, good anticipation. And it wasn't like a predictable track that I was laying. And then the dog was on track the whole time. But the handler was communicating with the ops room, and the ops room could then direct the cutoff teams into an appropriate area, and I walked straight into them. I was actually looking at my GPS, trying to predict to myself where these guys were going to ambush me, and I thought it was about 1 kilometer in front, and they just literally came out the bushes, all of them at the same time, and they were right on top of me. And I got a good kicking, but I deserved it. I got caught. So,
hey, how many times? So let's say how many times? Two-part question. One is, how many trainings do you do, let's say, in a 30-day period? And then the second part of the question is, how many poachers would you say you get on the track to in a 30-day period?
Okay, getting on a track, I mean, it could be daily, honestly.
Really?
There's different types of poachers. So you get guys coming into harvest honey, you get guys coming into bushmeat poach, and obviously you get your more sophisticated guys. So there's potential for the dog team to be, have a reaction almost daily.
Wow.
And obviously the information dictates whether they're going to follow up or not. So is a track, at the appropriate age, whatever. But the training scenarios that I do, I try and do them every 2 weeks. So we do obviously training every day, and less is more. So we're not doing 25K tracks every day.
For sure.
There's no ways. That probably takes it out of everybody.
Yeah.
And I would say, every 2 weeks I try and do them, depending on the time frame and how much training they need. So like the one program I support, I do one every week there, but that's because I'm working with multiple different teams. It's not because I'm, I've got one dog unit to support like that. I'm not just doing dog training there. I'm doing everything. So the training is very broad. So I even deploy without the dogs to do training exercises and deployments with the anti-poaching teams.
And how many times when you go out, when you're on the track to somebody, what would you say is your success rate with these dogs on finding the poachers and coming?
I'd say 60%.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
60% of the time you end up with what you came for.
And not necessarily the dog unit making the arrest, but there's other teams, other factors. So, it could be a cutoff team providing information to intelligence units so they could do a better follow-up. The way I look at it just comes down to anticipation.
For sure.
We know which communities poachers are coming from. Like significant poachers, commercial poachers. So obviously if they're heading in that direction, we know where they kind of get out pointers, and we'll go put a couple of teams up there. So once they know we're following them, we're never going to catch them. They just, it's like a gazelle. They go 100 miles an hour. They drop everything. If it's an ivory poacher, they drop the weapon first because they don't want to be engaged. They drop the weapon, they drop the equipment, and then they drop the ivory. So if we see ivory or something like that, then we know that they've cut loose.
Will you just let it go?
They literally. No, we'll persevere. Okay. And there's information that can be provided from that follow-up, even without the success of an arrest. What are their routes? What are they using? Which community do they go to? So we'll try and do the follow-up. If the dog's capable, then we'll do it. If not, we'll visually track it, depending on the terrain and the age of it. But it is definitely a team effort. It's not. I don't want to say the dogs are going out there and tracking every single poacher they find. And honestly, we have a lot of losses. It's not like we're the silver bullet. We're out there trying to help and trying to make a difference. But the whole train hard, fight easy is how we kind of approach what we do. And I mean, some of these poachers in Zimbabwe, there's a conservancy with rhino, and it's the largest one in Zimbabwe, and poachers are walking 60 kilometers into the conservancy, and they're like not even halfway through it to shoot a rhino. Wow. And then they'll shoot the rhino, and then they'll walk out like another 70, 80 kilometers. So it's massive distance. It's not like, we're doing 25 kilometers is actually not that big when you think about it. So, I do 25 kilometers because I think that's the extreme for a practical training day. And normally we're done by 2:00 though. It's first light start, and then it would if they haven't arrested me, we're finished by 2, and then debriefs in the afternoon. So it's a full training day, and everyone is absolutely broken at the end of it. And, especially me, jeepers. I'm like running around with these like fit 20-year-olds, they're kicking my butt. But
the locals are in such good shape too, because that's all they do. They're just on foot, so fit.
Yeah.
So most of these things, the terrain is so different from place to place. Like having been like to Rwanda and Uganda to Kenya, that there's such a varying degree of difference in terrain. Do you find those wide open plains where it's just miles or kilometers and kilometers of just it's just flat? Do you find it harder or easier to track that versus being in the proper bush, like being in a covered jungle?
No, not really. Like the hardest terrain that we come across is these like sort of like rocky canyons. It's just granite. It's hot as anything. Most of these places are in lower grounds, like we call it the low veld in Zimbabwe. And it's I'm talking 120 plus middle of the day. Wow. So really hot. And I have tracked people in those conditions, not for long, but it's all we want to know is which direction did they go in. So we track for like a kilometer, and then we just go straight into cool down drills and make sure that dog's safe. And it just tells us exactly where they've gone. And then we can, try and start making an educated guess of where they are, where they've gone, what they're hunting, that kind of thing. It could be a fish poacher, could be an ivory poacher. We don't know. But their movements tend to kind of like spell out what they're doing. Everybody has different habits.
And in doing the tracking of poachers, how much of the time is the poacher one who's already violated, one who's already killed an animal, versus they haven't gotten to the animal yet? You've seen them entering the park, but maybe they haven't killed, whatever it is.
Man, I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't capture that kind of data I could look it up. I'm going to say 50-50.
Okay. So the prevention is huge.
Look, you're always going to have people coming in, and wherever we're operating, there's probably 100 poachers elsewhere in the park. So, and there's communities all the way around these national parks, all the way. And, they're all hungry. They're all trying to dip in and get in there. So, I basically give the dog unit an AO. They can't be everywhere at once. So they go to an area and they stay in an area they do a 10-day patrol. And that's kind of like where they base themselves, that 10 days. Okay. And they'll move camp to camp, or they just do foot patrols, and they're part of that anti-poaching team. And then if they come across if they come across activity, then they'll start doing a follow-up if, needed or whatever. Obviously, there's times where, that we know there's a threat, or, someone hunting elephant, whatever. Okay, then the dog's going to get picked up by a chopper or whatever. Most places don't even have a helicopter. So the dogs just relocate by road, and then we start following up. Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Interesting. Cool. I want to talk about, maybe we'll do it in this next segment here, but the idea of the park, because I think people think a park is like a fenced in area, and they don't understand the mass expanse of a park, and that it's not fenced in, that the boundaries are kind of loose, right? So you do these training missions, you get your teams ready and stuff like that, which is important. And you kind of mentioned that sometimes if you were to see somebody on one of your missions, you would take after them. How often does that happen? Did you have any stories where you were actually just doing a training mission, and then all of a sudden you just happened upon somebody who happens to be poaching on one of your trainings?
Yeah, so we do come across poachers like activity regularly while we're, so these training missions, you got to look at it like we're training, but we're training in the operational environment. So we're not like in a training field teaching tracking, and then we've got like a detection area and a tracking area and obedience area or anything like that. We'll go into the park and we're working in the park training. So in effect, we're another patrol. So we'll go and train in areas deliberately knowing that we could come across, active poachers. So we'll come across like campfires. We take a guess at how old they are. And obviously if we're spending time in an area, we'll see different pieces of activity. That information kind of paints a picture for us and what we need to do. And so we have caught people coming in. Like I was in Gonarajo in Zimbabwe, and there was this one area. So it's the Rundi River, which is this beautiful river. But I mean, like if you see photos of it, I've got a pretty cool drone video of the dogs just walking down it, which I'll send to you. But I mean, it's like rocky, hot, just it looks like frightening. But for me, it's like, I don't know, it's beautiful. I just feel like that's your proving ground. If you can operate there successfully, then you're capable. So these poachers would be coming in from a community, they cut across country, they cut through our fence, and then they don't cut the fence physically and like cut the wire, but they use branches and stuff to like spread it open. And it's a fence that borders the one community where there's a lot of human wildlife issues. So these elephants are going into these communities and they're like trying to eat crops and that kind of stuff. And obviously these people have nothing already. So it's a huge political issue. It's just, there's nothing good that comes out of it. Most of these parks don't have a fence around them and the animals are free to roam in and out of it. So these guys come through that fence. They cut across a road, which is pretty unusual. This place they have to, but they're very careful about where they choose to cross over. And then they basically head towards the Rundi, and then we don't know where they've been going from that point on. So it's that rocky terrain that I was telling you about. So I said to like the ops room, like the ops boss man down there, and I said, listen, we need to get the dogs down here. Let's do some proper training and come up with a scenario. So, and he's a former Royal Marine, from the British military, great guy. And, we're on the same page. We speak the same language, and let's challenge these guys today. So him and I get dropped off in the community in flip-flops. And I've got a great photo of him. He didn't have any like flip-flops that he wanted to use. So he's got slippers that he got from like a Hilton hotel, like the white slippers that come in there. And so he must have nicked them or something. I don't know. And that's what he wore. And it's like paper thin. I was like, dude, you're going to get thorns everywhere. Right. So we literally, we're in the community. We go through the fence and now we're going straight into like, mimicking the exact same thing. The fence has an indicator, but it only gives you an identifier of 100 meters of where there's been movement on the fence. So a team gets deployed and they start checking the area, and we've left a little bit of information for them to see. Obviously it's training. We don't want them to miss it and nothing ever happens. We walk off into the bush. But also it's dusk. So the sun's setting. As soon as that sun starts going down, visual tracking goes out the window, and no one's going to be walking around with white light. It's just too dangerous. So we deliberately laid the track in the light at the start, so they would see the tracks coming into the park, and then as the sun's setting, we disappear along the Rundi River. So we do this track, and the guys catch us, and it's brilliant, and everyone's high-fiving, good training session. I've got a cool photo at the end of that track of the dog and the guys and everybody there, like, man, I can't believe we did it, And it was the first time we ever did like a proper night track and training. We'd done night tracks, but not like operational training like that. So you got to think, these guys don't have much resources and equipment, and so there's no NVGs. We won't use white lights on an operation like that. As soon as you have a white light, that you'll see it from so far away, the poachers will disappear. Right. So we've got to, if we're going to follow, the only time we'll go to white light is if there's an injury or, we stop pursuing the poachers. Everyone's great. 2 days later, get a call. There's been fence movement. So we're like, oh, okay. Where? The same boundary fence that you came through. Oh, okay. So we go to it. They came through the exact same point where we came in. You could just see with the rocks. It's nice. You can hide your footsteps there. Yeah. But these guys who do the visual tracking, they deployed first to confirm nobody had come in. And then they saw this rock. And how they see this stuff, it blows my mind away every time. But a rock had moved a little bit, and they could just see this tiny little like ring around the side of the rock of where it had been unsettled out of the sand. So there's someone's walked through here. Like, okay, I mean, it could have been a baboon, it could have been anything as far as I'm concerned, but they knew it was a human. So they started visually tracking, and they could see some, because obviously as they get further away from the fence, they become a bit more complacent with their movements, and you can see footprints. So by now we react with the dog team and start going in. I get there. So I go into support role, and literally my job is just to kind of stay on comms and make sure that everybody's talking to each other and supporting and trying to put teams to anticipate where the poachers are going. And my buddy Mikey, he trains dogs with me, and I sent him with the team. So, a lot of what I'm going to tell you now is like hearsay from Mikey, but this all did happen. So they start pursuing these guys. He's got his GPS, and I've got the track to show like the training event and then the real event. And it's almost the identical like path that these guys are taking. So off they go, and sun goes down, and there's no full moon. There's nothing. It's proper dark. And Mike's like, it was one point where he thought this is just silly. We're going to get hurt. He can't tell if the dog's on leash. He can't feel the leash, because the handler's working the dog. So he can just hear movement, and he's following like a silhouette, like a rough silhouette in front of him. People are tripping and they're going along. And they eventually stopped to give the dog some water. And, Mike said, I wanted to tell them let's just head back. This is silly. We're not going to catch these guys. And the handlers were like, well, we're going to go to the top of this hill, and then we're just going to see if we can see a fire anywhere. And Mike's like, okay, cool. So he grabs the dog for them, and he sits on this rock and like leans up against it, and he's sitting there for ages. So the guys go up the top. While they're up there, there's a guy up there, a poacher. So they arrest him. He didn't know they were coming up, just coincidentally. So they arrest him. Mike has no idea this is going on. And then he's sitting there, and he just hears this movement, and it's pitch black, and he just sees this thing. And the dog's sitting next to him, and the dog's panting, because he's been working hard. And he said the cue was the dog. So the dog just like stops panting and just looks into the darkness and ears up, like fully. This is that same dog, Sammy. And he's a brilliant dog, eh? And he just sees this person coming towards him. Now, where Mike's sitting, he can't the poacher can't see him. So Mike just stands up at the last second and grabs him, and he's got the dog. But just before he did that, the dog starts panting again, because the dog obviously thinks, what is that? What is that? What is that? Yeah. Oh, it's a person. Starts panting again. And funny. So this poacher, you can imagine the poacher's perception. He's like creeping through the dark. He knows his buddy's been arrested. He wants to get out of there. He doesn't know who anybody is, and he hears this panting now. And it's leopard country. So, he just froze, and then Mike jumped him. And, everybody says that guy screamed so loud. The guys on top of the hill heard him. I heard him in the vehicle, and he just dropped to the ground. He peed himself, and I guess he thought it was like end of days moment. Yeah. And so he got arrested, and they brought back. But that was, those are literally the unluckiest poachers in the world, because we couldn't have rehearsed that any better than what happened. So the dogs were absolutely ready for it. That was a pretty cool event for us.
Wow. And so in the middle of the night, what happens there? If you're out and you're tracking somebody and certain nightfall's coming and you don't have a full moon, what do? Do you camp for the night? Do you turn around and try to get back to base camp? Or?
Yeah, so that because we made a rest, we actually walked back through the night, but we had white light at that point. Okay. So we just turned the torches on with the arrest. And then, I headed back safely. But it was quite weird, because the path back to the vehicle was like a good 10 kilometers, but they came over the mountain, and it was like 3 kilometers. But it's just, it's very rough terrain.
And you said they were fish
I can't even explain it. It's just, we don't know what they are when we start pursuing them. Yeah, so it's illegal to fish in a national park.
Right.
You can't go into a national park without, so, we call them fish poachers. So they come in and they, do a lot of fishing, and they go and sell the fish they catch out in the communities. So, the way, like there's so many people out there that'll say, well, they're hungry, let them go type thing. But I think, you got to treat every case the same. Yeah. There might not be fish poachers. And they look, at the end of the day, the honey harvesters, the fish poachers, the bushmeat poachers, like the sustenance guys, they're opportunistic as well. And they're providing information to the big poachers. They all drink in the same beer hall. They all, they're from the same, they're probably related to each other. So there's, they're coming across like a big bull elephant with big tusks, and the whole community is going to know about where that elephant is. If it's full moon, there's a good chance you're going to have a few hunting teams coming in to try and get that elephant to take the ivory. A lot of poachers hunt black rhino at nighttime. because their eyesight's so poor. They'll hear noise, and they're curious animals by nature, so they'll move towards the noise. The poacher will just make a noise, sit in the path. As a rhino approaches, they drill it, and then they take the horn. So they're actually really easy to hunt. They're pretty stupid animals. Daytime, they're going to charge at 100 miles an hour and just destroy everything in their path.
Yeah.
But at nighttime, it's a lot simpler. So yeah, we just, I think information, like, the same for us. Information is intelligence. It helps us shape our plan, and it's the same for the poachers. Those fish poachers, if they'd come in an hour after we finished our training exercise, they would have seen that we're in that area. They would have seen that we were operating there, and they would report that to their friends and family. And everybody knows, okay, this is where the dog unit is. We've got a reputation, obviously, and it's a unique situation having dogs in a national park. Sure. So that information gets pushed out to the community, and they know, well, let's not go there, we'll go elsewhere. It's just, we're just using each other's information. I mean, it's a chess game.
Yeah, for sure. So in a park, like I want to really define it. I know you said there's a fence, but the fence lines on parks really are very rare, and they're just there to protect certain communities and stuff like that where there's farming and vegetation, right? Yeah.
So like that national park there is part of the, I just forgot the Greater Transfrontier National Park, which is Kruger National Park, Limpopo in Mozambique, Gonorrhea in Zimbabwe, and there's other like conservancies along the way that are part of it. And the whole idea is to encourage the original natural like elephant migrations and other species, to move these massive distances. So there's no fences. I mean, that park there, we have 110 kilometer border with Mozambique, and that's, I would say, 99% of the. No, I shouldn't say that. Vast majority of the poachers come from Mozambique, and like elephant poachers. So they're coming across an international border into a national park and drilling elephants, and then they're running out. And we could only follow until the international border. We can't cross into Mozambique.
Okay, you're not allowed to, even though it's part of the same terrain. It's part of the conservancy. You're not allowed to move across the national border. Literally,
there's so it'd be like tracking a person from the US into Canada.
And then boom,
so we've got to,
right at that border.
We have to, so look, there's relationships on the other side with certain NGOs and other entities that can provide a follow-on, but look, it's rare. It's not simple. So there's a lot of.
That's a tough limitation for you. I mean, if you're up against near those borders and they know that, and I'm sure they do know that the poachers are quite sophisticated, you're done. You stop at that line and you're like, okay, do whatever you're going to do, and you can't stop them anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do there. So, but obviously the elephants have full migration, so that's that's why that fence has been removed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important. But I mean, doesn't it just kill you? I mean, the fact, like what you said about the rhinos, that they're obviously a very unsophisticated animal. I was charged by one at Lewa, but for the most part, like you said, at night they're really simple animals. They hear a sound and they just get dusted and then their horn gets chopped off and they're dead. And it's just insane. It's insane to me what the cruelty of these people.
No, it is.
It's not like they're eating it.
I mean,
stuff, and it's a completely useless thing to kill a rhino for its horn.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, there's value in it for other people. I think the going rate for rhino horn now is $65,000 a kilo. Yeah. It's more valuable than gold or drugs or whatever. So, yeah, there's less than. I think there's like 18,000 white rhino left and 7,000 black rhino left. Don't quote me on that, but it's.
No, I know it's very low.
There's not many. Yeah. And if you want to compare it, like I was just reading an article this morning, and apparently there's 1 billion, cows on the planet, which that's just crazy for like meat and dairy.
Yeah. And only 18,000 rhinos. So your story is crazy fascinating. I'm dying to go out there with you. Janice says, are you going to go? I'm dying to go. I mean, it's one of those things I just definitely, I want to go back to Africa. I have to take Janet on a trip there. I promised her I'd take her because it was that amazing. But this whole thing with you, I think would be like more of like a guy's trip, right? I mean, you never take your wife, do you?
No. So, I mean, we have done trips together, but not on the training missions. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to take Janet. We're going to go on a proper safari and have a nice relaxing time in a nice camp like in Amboseli or in Rwanda or somewhere nice. But
glamping.
Yeah, we'll go glamping, and then I'm going to come with you, and I want to do some training. Whenever you go on your training mission or like missions for anti-poaching missions, do you ever run across a time when you, like, let's say you catch somebody and you stay out there and then you get somebody else? Is it like ever like a domino effect where you just keep more things happen after the first arrest?
No, so we've had a few like that. I would say the one that like kind of jumps to mind. I was in Namibia, and we'd set the program up, and we were going into a new region. So that's a national program, and so we covered basically anywhere where there's endangered species we could deploy to. So I was actually supposed to be doing a training mission, going over, kind of work on the deficiencies for the dogs, teach the guys some more, get into some more advanced stuff, maybe do some of those like 25-kilometer tracks, that kind of thing. We hadn't done it until that point, so I was keen to like kind of move forward with the training. So we're heading up to the northeast, and as we it's like a 12-hour drive. So I land late at night, sleep in the morning. We go to like the nice supermarket. We get our like, chocolate bars, I guess, the stuff that's going to be good for morale later. Yeah. And then we cut loose and we drive up north. So it's 12, 13-hour drive. Get up there. The guys are in a van with the dogs in the van, a big, tall van, and the first place we get to, it's like 4:00 in the afternoon, and the warden comes out, and he's like the local boss man, and he says, in the morning, we're going to, we've got some intelligence of a guy with a rifle, and he's been hunting elephants, so we're going to go and hit him. And what I'm going to say about my guys in Namibia, they are fantastic. They have the best work ethic you can imagine. They think big. They do the work because they're dedicated to the country. Every time I do handler selection, I ask everybody to write letters on why they want to be a dog handler. And you get I like dogs. I had a dog growing up, and okay, cool. But these guys were like, well, poaching affects the GDP of the country. I need to serve my country and ensure that we stop poaching to protect tourism. And I was like, whoa, like these guys are like serious. There's dedication and passion here. So I work with them. I love working with them, and we can do crazy things together because I don't have to ask them to do anything because we're just going to do it. So we get to, so the warden comes out. Now he's a senior dude, and my guys are not senior dudes. And the one hand is like, why can't we go now, boss? And I'm not gonna lie, I flew that flight from Atlanta to Joburg. That's a 16-hour flight. I was and then I got to Windhoek, drove up there 12 hours. I was shattered. And in my head, I'm going, we could do a little rest, but the boys are like rearing to go. So I'm motivated by their motivation. And so, I pulled a little bit of rank, and I was like, okay, guys, let's walk the dogs, get them some water, feed them, get some info, and then we'll go. So we head out, and it's like 6:00, sun setting. We've got another 2-hour drive to where this intelligence is coming from. So we get out there. Now it's dark, and the information's very loose. So we're basically going to have to kind of go off hunches. And these guys, so if you imagine like Southern Africa, depending how good your geography is, so you have Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Zambia, and Zimbabwe together. And there's a strip in Namibia, and it's called the Zambezi region. So that meets, and all 5 countries meet each other there. So it's quite a unique area, like if you want to travel, but also poachers. That main herd of like the last massive wild elephant herd migrates from Zimbabwe into Botswana, up through Namibia into Angola, and then they're moving off into Zambia now. So, we're talking about the fenceless areas. That's huge. It's called the Kaza, and it's just absolutely massive what these elephants are migrating. So these guys are coming in from Zambia into Angola, south through Namibia, and into Botswana, and they go and hunt elephants in these like really kind of quiet, deserted areas because they've stopped elephant hunting. Or just all game hunting. It started up again recently though, but at the time it was illegal to hunt in Botswana. Right, wrong, and different. It's a totally different subject. But what's happened is because the hunting stopped, no one's invested in those areas anymore. So there's literally no boots on the ground. So the only people that are there are poachers. So they got pretty much like freedom to move. So we're in that strip in Namibia, and we're thinking, we're going to familiarize the dogs with the terrain, do that kind of stuff, and then we get intelligence of there's an informant, and what his sole job is to move people across the border. Mm-hmm. So we go and chat to this guy. He gives us some info for a house. So we go and raid the house, and got some photos of the dog searching the house. And this one dog does this massive, beautiful, like airing up, just like she's on her back feet, her nose is in the air, and she's sniffing out. And I would have put a year's salary on that something was hidden there. And just above where she was this like kind of where the thatching met the mud wall. There was like a shelf, but it was hidden, and it was a perfect length for a rifle. And I just thought, man, they've got a rifle up there. They've hidden a rifle up there, and they've taken loose, and it's like residual scent, and there's something going on, because this dog was very good and very consistent with her detections. And so the owner of the house, we called him in. And I said to him, "Where's the rifle?" And I was totally, going off what the dog had told me, and you could just see his face was just like, "How do they know?"
Well, wait, how did you know it's a rifle? Is the dog trained to indicate
just
on
the behavior
ivory?
of the dog? So the dog's trained to indicate
Sorry.
on ivory, rhino horn, pangolin, weapons, ammunition, and bushmeat.
Okay, so
6 odors.
Weapons as well.
Yeah, weapons and ammo.
Okay, so is there a difference the way the dog would indicate on, say, something like ivory or rhino horn compared to weapons?
No, it's just a passive sit response. Yeah,
Sit response,
and then you
got it.
investigate.
Okay.
But the behavior the dog showed told me that she's very interested. There's something going on, and it was a very change of behavior is what it comes down to. So I knew something was in there. So we start talking to the guy. His wife comes home, and she starts yelling at him and hitting him and stuff, because they've got, basically, all these like kind of military style folks around, and could tell. And she's like, "I told you not to bring it home," and I was like, "Okay, we've got him." And so she starts blabbering. He's like, "I'm done." And I said, "What? Look, help us help you. Give me some information, and your life will be a lot easier." And so the boys start chatting to him, and he's like, "There's some ammunition in a nearby field." So we take the dog, we do a search of the field. She indicates, and we dig up in the ground. He's hidden all the ammunition for this rifle. It's a 300 caliber.
Wow.
So serious ammo, serious weapon.
You want to keep the ammo away from the rifle.
Then he said,
like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. But so we couldn't find the rifle, and he said, "Oh, someone's borrowed it to go hunting with," and there were a few rounds that were missing. So it's like, okay, and that, they're such an expensive commodity, weapons, and they're completely obviously illegal. It's very difficult to get a permit for them. So, these guys like rent them out. And we actually caught someone in Zambia who'd been renting, he was in the Air Force, and he'd been renting his AK-47 out to poachers to use. Dog indicated, found it, serial number was cross-checked, and this guy was arrested for it. So, but that's a different story. But, we wanted to go and get the guy who had the rifle. So that would be like number 2. So anyway, we went and we cordoned his area off. And we knew he was actually staying in like a hotel. And when I say a hotel, imagine like 6 mud huts put together, and there's 6 rooms, with like a communal kind of, so we knew he was in we guessed which room he was in with the information. So we go in, we obviously cordon the whole thing off. We find him. He wasn't in the right room. He was in the other room, but we still got him. And so we start chatting to him. And so this guy's like had a few beers. So he gets fisty and he starts trying to fight one of the guys. And I mean, this guy is one of the strongest human beings I know. And he's a good man. And one of the dog handlers. He's a beast, man. And he just flattens this poacher, just puts him on the ground. So we arrest him and we take him back for questioning. And, when you get a lone buffalo in Africa, like that animal's alive for a reason, So we call them Dugger boys. That's the nickname we give them. It's a Dugger boy. So you don't want to mess with a Dugger, Dagga. And
Dugger,
so Dugger boy is a serious, buffalo who has been kicked out the herd, but he survived on his own for a while. And, the lions haven't touched him or anything. And there's a reason for that. So it's a tough animal.
Right.
so this guy, now he's still got a few beers in the system, and he's sitting there and he's like, me, I'm a Duggar boy. I don't fear you. So I walked away at that point. I was like, okay, I don't even want to know what's going to happen. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so anyway, he starts like singing to the world where everything is. So the actual rifles, the guys kind of like questioned him for a little bit longer, and he started telling them everything. So he wasn't a Duggar boy for much longer. Anyway, basically the rifle had been sent into Angola. There was a herd of elephants up there, and a hunter was going up. We didn't have jurisdiction there. We couldn't go into it. But we knew, it had been moved out, and it was confirmed by another guy who we arrested for basically taking people across the border. Mm-hmm. But coincidentally, that guy provided information on a pangolin. So we had an informant working in another area. And so this is all like one after the other, no sleep, nothing. God. We're just like constantly moving on to one up after the other. And
you're still,
now
where
we're
are you
at
now?
like
You're in Zimbabwe, or where are you now?
No, Namibia.
You're in Namibia still. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't left Namibia. We've stayed in that country the whole time.
Okay. Yeah.
And so then we go after, these guys, and there's an informant who's been providing information, and he works with us. So I give him the Garmin little insert free marketing for Garmin here, but the Alpha 100, the dog collar. So I give him that, and I start. We send him in a vehicle, and it's one of the undercover vehicles. So he goes off, and he loads all these guys in, and they take him on this like basically daisy chain route of going to random spots in the middle of nowhere. And they just want to make sure they're not being followed, because they're trying to sell a pangolin that they said they had in their possession.
Wait, back up. So who's the guy who you put in the car, who you gave the Garmin tracking thing to?
He works with the intelligence unit.
But he's not one of your guys.
He's not a dog handler, no, but he's part of the team that we work with.
Okay, but do they know he's part of the team?
No. They think he's a buyer trying to buy pangolins.
Okay, perfect. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And so we go in, and I'm basically looking at my GPS, and I'm seeing where the dog is on the screen.
Yeah.
So I'm following them out of sight, so they don't know we're following. And I've got a pretty decent hire vehicle at the time, 4-wheel drive type thing. But it's got South African number plates, and there's a lot of like people that will rent a South African vehicle. So all the locals just assume straight away it's a tourist, especially, we're in the middle of nowhere. It's just a pretty random white guy in the middle of nowhere type thing, so they just see me and they think tourist, he's just traveling through. So I overtake this vehicle. I've got all my boys in the vehicle with me, like they're hidden down. Mm-hmm. And we just basically, stop the vehicle in front of them. They don't know what's going on, because there's this crazy tourist just stopping on the road in the middle of nowhere. And all my boys jump out, and they, all I said to them was just contain them. We knew they didn't have any weapons or anything like that. So we just basically put pressure on the door so they couldn't get out. And we had five people in the vehicle. So we took them out one at a time. And, one guy manages to like kind of scuffle and starts running off, and he disappears into the bush. And I just tell one of my other boys, like, go grab him. So he takes off. He comes back 5 minutes later carrying this dude. So we rescued the pangolin, and it was actually released the next day. It was completely healthy, safe. So I went into a more alive, and went into a more secure part of the park. And then we drove back 2 hours back to our camp and started training. So that was 72 hours of and that 2 hour drive back, we were doing like 15-minute shifts, because we were all like falling asleep behind the wheel, just absolutely shattered. But it was a long haul of, like traveling, and then just finding people. And like I said, one after the other. So it was a hugely successful, initial part of the trip. And then we went to training, and it's like, well, we don't need to do training, boys. You proved yourselves,
Yeah. Geez. So, that's got to be such a rewarding feeling, especially wrapping it up and getting a live pangolin. That's just unheard of, I would think.
Yeah, that was a really cool win. Yeah, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. That was, sure. And the look on their faces, I'll definitely remember. Because it was like complete disbelief and panic, and it's like, yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
So those guys went to jail.
So cool. That is freaking awesome. That's just, and here's the story of the dog collar catching somebody, not the dog, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's one thing after the other, and like I said, it's like we're under-resourced and we don't have a lot of things, and you just make do with what you have. And if we didn't have that, we still would have made a plan, but it would have made it more challenging. So yeah, it worked in our favor. But actually, like to back up a little bit, when we were driving up there in Namibia, they've got this red line that goes like, right across the country, and any animals north of that aren't allowed south of that because of tuberculosis in animals. So it's a big checkpoint there, and I did a lot of training there, not on this trip, but before, to make sure that dogs could search vehicles and that kind of stuff. We're looking for illegal bushmeat and that kind of stuff. So we go up there and we stop, and we give the dogs a rest, and this vehicle goes through with this family, and the guy's like, well, let's stop it and do a search, just to kind of give the dogs something to do, kind of like break the monotony of being in a van all day.
Yeah.
And so they search the vehicle, and it's a family of like 5, and they all like, high-fiving, and this is cool, look at the dogs work, and off they go. You could tell straight away that they're not doing anything dodge, but it was a good training opportunity. So we finish everything, the training, we go back down, and we stop off at that same place. We're actually camping there because there's another national park nearby where there's rhinos. So we want to go and do some ops in that area and just some presents. And so while we're there, that same vehicle comes by, and it's the same family. And this little girl gets out, and she gives one of the handlers a note. And I sit in the distance, I'm trying to work out what's going on. And it's a little note that she's drawn a picture of a dog, and it says, "Thank you, anti-poaching team, for protecting the animals," type thing. I'm getting a little choked up here, but it's that for me, that was like the biggest win of all, because you're like changing the minds of the next generation, and I think that's where the solutions are going to come from. It's not, we do cool things and we go out there and we're stopping poachers, but poaching's never going to stop. It's those kind of like big meaningful events, for me, is that's where she's going to go tell her mates at school. And, so I don't know. I just, that was a cool moment for me. It was one of the coolest moments.
Yeah. I mean, it is really about kids. It's about our future. It's about education. And I think the more we can get little schools or little education programs to these communities, all throughout Africa, Namibia, Botswana, even Kenya, I see it. The more these kids learn, the more valuable they see that life is of these animals, and not to slaughter them,
absolutely.
Not to do this. I mean, what a great thing.
Yeah.
I want to I want to put a link in the video description down below to an organization or any way that people can contact you. I mean, again, I'm promising you, I'm going to donate to you just because I love your work. I'm going to get you one of the collars, and anything I can do to help you.
Thanks, mate.
I mean, your stuff is really amazing. I mean, Stoops and Blackie introduced us, and I mean, I consider you a brother in arms, because I mean, what an amazing fight you have, what you're doing. I just can't think of anything that's more closer to my heart in dealing with these animals in the continent of Africa and dogs. I mean, you really, I'm so freaking jealous of you, man. I hate you. I want to be you.
Well, I appreciate it. No, we'll get you out there, mate. We'll get you out, and you can come join us and come run around the bush and have some fun.
I'm going to. I'm going to. I swear.
Yeah.
We'll plan on that, but I'm going to put some links in the video descriptions down below to get in touch with you to help this work, because it needs to continue, and it needs to dominate. It needs to really, really dominate. I want to see it go. So thanks for the chat. Let's stay in touch while you're over there. Send me some pictures and stuff, and I'll share it through my social media and for all your work, because it's epic. I'm so impressed by what you're doing. It's really it's a fantasy of mine to go do stuff like that. So
no, thanks, man. I definitely will. Yeah. Send you some cool stuff.